Okay, and if we can start recording, great. All right, well, hello everybody. I've already welcomed the panelists, but now I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us by Zoom this afternoon to listen to day one of the Seeding Creativity panel meeting. Today we'll be reviewing about half of the 109 finalists for this grant. And all guests, as you know, are in listen mode only and will not have the opportunity to comment on the grant or answer any questions at this time. So a couple of things to note. All of the applications have been read and reviewed by a peer panel who are here today with expertise in a number of different disciplines and pathways. All panelists are experienced and skilled in one or more creative practice or field, and they have broad representation among both. We have had broad representation among both the preliminary and the final panelists. Staff does not review or score applications, only our panelists do. We're going to be going through the applications very quickly today. For some applications, there may be more discussion than for others. Please note that this is not a reflection on any application, but may just be that there's agreement among the panelists and there's nothing specific to add to the comments that have already been made. Please note that each application has been thoroughly reviewed and scored by the entire panel before this meeting. So panelists can make adjustments to their score at the meeting, and final scores will then be compiled at the end of the 2 days with recommendations for funding. This panel will be referring to each application by number only, not by the artist's name. So if you are an applicant listening in today, please have your grant number on hand so you can see where we are in the process and which grant application is yours. And we're going to be going through the day one applications in numerical order. If you can't attend all of this meeting, it's going to be pretty long. Remember, we'll be posting these sessions within the next few days on the Sacramento Office of Arts and Culture YouTube channel. This is only day one of our meetings, and an additional panel will take place next week to complete the reviews. But we don't expect to announce the final awards until October 10th. We usually bring them to our Arts Commission, and that's the date that'll be happening. So be patient. We'll do all of the reviews before then, but then we'll make the announcements a little bit later. And that's everything that I have to say to our visitors. So again, welcome and thanks for coming. And I think we are ready to start our reviews, and I should have my list of order here somewhere in one of these areas. Okay, our first application is number 15, and Kara's going to introduce that one.
Great. So application number 15 is in the visual arts discipline and is in the research pathway. A brief summary of the project is that the artist is using will be creating innovative artwork depicting the relationship between nature and humanity by exploring contemporary art languages in Sacramento used in marginalized communities using the research pathway. The project outcome includes conducting research to create new artwork with multicultural calligraphy, markers, natural and recycled objects. My notes on this project are that I really enjoyed sort of the approach to the visual arts medium by using this thoughtful research method. I thought that it was compelling, tapping into different communities and using a unique approach through calligraphy as it would be translated into the final product. My concerns were that it didn't hit a few of the grant proposal or the grant guidelines, specifically the need to engage with promise zones. I thought that there could be a little bit more elements with the actual impact of the community engagement in the final product as well.
Okay, any other comments? Anybody have something to add?
Yes, I wanted to say that the artist's work samples are quite authentic. It shows traditional artwork, the calligraphy, the seal stamps, all that indicate, the true Chinese tradition. And of course, the person is now trying to fuse the the Western and Eastern art together. But I agree that it does not address the economic zones.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my comment is just, I agree with everyone. It's interesting to see that up north, there's a lot of connection to science and kind of the natural environment. So that was kind of a common theme within all of the applications. But in this one in particular, I felt that the artist was exploring it in a very interesting way, incorporating the fusion of two different cultures. And I would also like to make note of the extensive experience that the artist listed as well. I think that kind of added a lot of validity to the application.
Yeah, I just would like to echo also, Carla, what you just said. It definitely stood out to me that the artist explained in great detail the depth of their personal and professional commitment to this work. The artist's statement was very thorough and detailed and really painted a clear picture of a deep, passionate commitment to this work. And that was very refreshing to read. So.
Okay, thank you for the comments. That was great. Good way to start. And if you just want to take a look and finalize your scores, we can move on to number 2. And the second application also, Kara, is application number 41.
Yes. Okay. So for number 41, let's see. So applicant number 41, the primary discipline is visual arts, and the pathway the artist has chosen is social impact. This artist created a project that addresses domestic violence. So through the artist project, they will be creating a online Google form for victims of domestic violence to share their experiences. Then we'll connect those people to domestic violence organizations, reaching a large scope of survivors to complete the form. Using the anonymous statements submitted, the artist will create a series of paintings, specifically selecting direct quotes from each. And then to conclude, the project will display the paintings and the statements in a comprehensive art exhibition. My thoughts or my feedback on this application was that I thought that it was a really thoughtful approach to sensitive subject matter. I also really was impressed with the detail and thoughtful application of an emerging artist, a young emerging artist. I thought that the proposal itself was fully fleshed out concerning quite a few of the grant requirements. And my concern would be that the subject matter might be a little bit too sensitive for this grant, and the artist might not have fully established their own voice in their artistic practice, thinking that the project itself might be a little heavy or dense for them to explore in such a broad reach, tapping so many subjects. But that's just, I think, initial gut reaction. But I was really impressed by the application as a whole.
Yeah, I could just add that I definitely really appreciated the themes that the artist was exploring. It's definitely something very difficult, and but I did feel that they provided enough evidence to show a commitment to the subject and also an ability to kind of follow through. I would have liked to see more information, and I think that would have helped maybe add some more context and understanding of how the exhibition would take place. And part of that was to know how many works would be created. I noticed that that wasn't listed, and I felt like that would have been good to know to also understand capacity of the artist to create that many works. I also felt that the work samples, they were good, but I also kind of would have liked to see just different types of work samples to see the breadth of work that the artist can produce.
Any other final comments?
Yeah, I've got one to add. I'm sorry, Melissa. I also, I echo everything that was said about this application. I was really taken aback by how thorough and how unique. Definitely in reading through the applications, this one stood out. I think I would have liked to see more detail about how the community would be engaged in the development and execution of the project beyond being subjects in the art. That was a theme that I'd seen in multiple applications. Definitely with this one, that was something that stood out.
Great. Thank you. Okay, if there are no other comments, then we're ready to move on to the next one, which is number 42.
Okay, this one is me again. So application number 42 is a visual arts discipline with a creation pathway. Brief summary of the project. Inner Time Zone is a personal passion project aimed towards immigrant children and the children of immigrants. It will consist of 12 to 15 surrealist oil paintings discussing themes of the strangeness of growing up with the culture of another country. I thought that this project, sorry, one second. I really did enjoy this project. I thought that the context was, really important to discuss. I thought that the statement was powerful and represented a interesting demographic of individuals that should have their story told through art. I think that the work samples were really strong. The artist has clearly a grasp on their medium. However, I found a little bit of a disconnect between the artist's project concept and the art samples submitted. So I'm just a little on, I wanted to see more of a correlation between the project as well as the artwork itself. So that was sort of where my disconnect, where I thought there was a slight disconnect.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else?
Sure, I can add. I also thought this was a very strong proposal. I would have liked to know more information about the children that would be selected in their participation. For example, the artist mentions during the showcase, we can provide a platform for immigrants' children to voice their unique perspectives and stories, but what does that platform look like? How is it facilitated? So a little bit more information on engagement approaches and sensibilities would have made this proposal stronger.
Anyone else have anything to add to those comments? Okay.
John, I think you're muted.
Oh, John, yeah, you're muted. There you go.
Sorry, I wanted to make a general comment, about outreach or about selection. It's a pretty tricky methodology apply. You have to kind of tell who the organization you may have worked with, in this case, immigration organizations or churches. Those details help us a lot to let us know that, you thought about this and you know what you're doing, that you have the network to reach out to these people. Otherwise, it makes us, lacking the detail or confidence to make a good judgment.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that also, like the approach. So in addition to identifying the potential partners, it's also like, well, what approach would you take for that specific community? And I felt like this one it would have been nice to know a little bit more about approach.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Okay, finalize your scores. And we are at 55. Oh, sorry, excuse me, that was 55. 66? I'm losing track.
Actually, I think we are at 55.
We are at 55, thank you, sorry about
that. No, I've been trying to too, because I know it's all me right now.
It's all you.
Okay, so the primary discipline for applicant number 55 is multidisciplinary arts. And the secondary discipline is visual arts, and the pathway is performance and presentation. The brief summary of the project concept. The project is called The People in Our Neighborhood, and it celebrates Sacramento's unique neighborhoods and diverse populations within the Sacramento Promise Zone by preserving and documenting history, by collecting stories of those who experienced it. I thought that this project was really interesting, specifically because it takes place within the Sacramento Promise Zones and amplifies the voices of the community members within that, which is a key component of this grant. Additionally, I thought it was really interesting to see the merger of storytelling meets visual arts, meets education, meets lineage exploration. I thought that it was a really beautiful way to reach a wide demographic, but share their stories in both a sort of narrative as well as a visual manner. I thought that it was a really interesting process in which the project rolled out with regard to the interviews and the research that went into the compilation of materials, which would then result in sort of a tangible display and exhibition of this work.
Yeah, I can add. I also, ditto to all of your comments, Kara. I thought it was interesting that the artists mentioned, celebration of Sacramento's unique neighborhoods and diverse populations in Promise Zone, but I believe that the GIS tracking sheet indicated that they were not in the Promise Zone. So that was kind of a conflict within the kind of what the artist stated and then what was identified on that sheet. So that was kind of the main thing that stood out for me.
And I probably will interject that disconnect could possibly happen, and it may happen for other applicants because sort of where they're doing their work and where they're creating their work was the place that we asked them for, and then some artists or individuals may then bring their work out into different communities, but we had to basically pick a location that was sort of their primary location, and that's what we tracked. So, but I think it's really important to pay attention to both because, yeah, that's key. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add that hasn't been said? Okay, then we will move to number 66. And
I think that's me again.
That's you again. I think that might be your last one right now.
I'm leading this here. I got this.
You got
it. Okay, so artist number 66, the primary discipline is visual arts, secondary discipline, media arts, pathway, creation. A brief summary of the project concept. The artist wants to produce multiple comic books and graphic novels, specifically seeking to produce 2 anthology-style graphic novels by continuing creator-owned series that they have already established. These books will serve as the engine to create opportunities for artists in addition to the artists themselves. Both series use Sacramento and California as the settings of the story within. and have collaborations with local small businesses. Something, not to go into too much more detail here with reading verbatim, but the books themselves are focused on issues regarding social impact, climate change, housing insecurity, sexual assault, and so their magazine, or sorry, their zines as well as comic books. I think that what I found to be really interesting was, first of all, that there weren't very many projects regarding comic books, zines, and sort of this form of like a grassroots illustrative distribution perspective. I think there was maybe only one other application that hit on that. So I thought in the uniqueness in terms of the application pool, this one kind of stood out to me. I thought that it was a really interesting approach to sort of these social issues, that you don't usually see within that medium. And I loved that there was this focus towards community engagement in the development process of creating these works.
Thank you.
Great. I'll just add that, yeah, I said good proposal and it has many cross-sector explorations. I did want to know how artists would be recruited. So like what is the selection process? I don't think that was mentioned, so I would have liked to have known that information.
Anybody else want to add any additional comments?
May I ask a clarifying question? And this is like an open-ended question to everyone, because I think I might be seeing this from a different perspective. This artist's description of how they were going to engage community, how do you feel that the engagement is deep? I might not be asking this question clearly. I guess what I'm trying to say is how has everyone else measured like depth of community engagement in the development and execution of the project?
I think that's a good question, because I think some artists, take it on from like a personal narrative, like they identify with the community that they're serving. Like maybe they were DV, domestic violence victims, and so a victim themselves. And so they're working with that audience. So I feel like some of them, the connection exists in that way. Whereas with other ones, they're genuinely like kind of interested in the topic and are exploring it through a way. And so for me, it's like I kind of look to first try to identify what the connection is, and if it's like a direct connection. And if it's indirect, then it's looking at, okay, like what engagement approaches are they undertaking to understand and like treat this work with sensibility? And so I try to find that within it, like what is the engagement approach of, if they're referring to, immigration, like, and they're saying that they're interested because they got inspired by this, then, okay, well, what approach are they taking? Are they showing sensitivity to the topic, knowledge, research, commitment? And that wasn't always shown, it wasn't always evident in some documents, but I tried to piece it together based on that.
I'd like to add a little to that whole collaboration and validation bit. Under the best applications, we see that there are actually quotes from the collaborators or somebody, a letter of recommendation, or even just name the organization that you already had a discussion with them. I think those are things that are really important as part of the validation of the grantsmanship.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Okay, if that's all the discussion, then I think we are ready to move on to the next one. And believe it or not, it's not Kara, it's number 79, and it's John.
Okay, thank you. Number 79, application is under dance and also under presentation. And on this application, they're wanting to put up 2 pop-up shows entitled Stages of basically dance, singing, and musicianship to unify the artists. This was in fact started by a well-known artist during the time of COVID, when basically, most of the art world were in dormancy and people were in need of, extra, how do you say, stimulation. And so this artist, who has a well-known reputation outside Sacramento as well, came back and started an organization which had seemed to be getting a lot of local acclaims. It's only been around for 2 or 3 years. It's a very uplifting message they put. I said the applicant seems to be a new group started in the COVID years that has garnered local acclaim. Their training includes mental health seminars with meditation and yoga, which I think are good disciplinary practices to instill sort of calmness, concentration, and control. And the good samples are, I thought, excellent, showing the breadth. And they are an inclusive group that are not focused on youth, but adults and all kinds of different people. It's a very good video that shows a lot of testimonial things, and I think it generally shows a very uplifting and program that will bring, I think, Sacramento to another stage of development in this genre. So.
Great, thank you. Any other comments?
I really enjoyed, I felt like there was sort of a hint of professional development that was included in this as well, which isn't really necessarily a specific grant guideline, but I just really think there's always opportunity, especially when engaging with, the community on a large scale. And when you're talking about some of these social issues, to incorporate that in a really strategic way. I thought that was worth noting, and something that I really appreciated seeing in this artist submission.
Yeah, I also like that there is a great sense of community within the group, but then also building community outside with the audience. So I felt that was kind of very dynamic to have both external and internal community impact and kind of cohesiveness met.
Yeah. And another thing I like about it too, that the application also, points out the issues and concerns, such as lack of motivation, maybe, and unity from the community, the need for united artists community, and a push for mental health intertwined. These oftentimes, I think, an application minimizes, the concerns, and this particular application sort of thought about these pretty carefully and wrote them down. And I thought that's a very sort of positive approach to it.
Okay, if there are no more comments, thank you. Check your scores again. And we're moving on to number 80, and that's Carla.
Okay, this is part of creation/visual arts. The artists will meet with a diverse group of queer families and get to know their stories, which will allow them to emphasize their unique narratives. They will photograph and sketch their subjects and will interpret their experiences into a body work consisting of drawings and paintings. My thoughts are, and give me 1 second, I'm opening up this proposal. Okay. I really appreciated that the artists included a lot of personal narrative and kind of expressing how they got to this exploration. I felt that their work samples were extremely strong and showed a diverse set of mediums, which I thought was great to understand the breadth of their ability as artists. I also thought that the community involvement was evident and impact was also evident. And I did think that they should have included how the artist will be, how the artist will select their subject matters and depict them. So a little bit more information on that process would have been appreciated. But I thought that this proposal was very strong, and specifically their work samples were very, very, very good.
Thank you. Anybody have anything they'd like to add to those comments? Okay, then you can finalize your scores. And the next one is also, oops, the next one's also you, Carla. Number 81 is next.
Okay, so for this one, the pathway is social impact, the art medium is visual arts, and the artists would want to curate an art show with 10 to 15 local POC artists. They want to showcase artists in a space where the artists feel comfortable, confident, and accepted for the work that they create. I felt that this was a good proposal with good indication of community impact and integration. Again, going back to a point that I've made with other applicants, I felt that more information on the artist selection process would have made the proposal stronger. So who are they engaging? Why are they engaging them? What is the criteria? That sort of information I felt was necessary to include. And then I would say that their work samples I felt were really strong as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I really enjoy a curatorial proposal. I think I only read 2 or 3 maybe of all the applicants. And I think it's a ripe opportunity to be able to work with a number of artists in an interesting way. However, I felt like it was on this proposal was a little vague with specifics. The overarching concept was super strong. So the work samples included were strong. I just felt like we weren't provided enough information to make a fully accurate analysis of what the final product of this exhibition would look like.
Anybody want to add to anything they've just heard? Other comments? Okay, then, thank you. We are going to move on to number 82. Kara?
Okie dokie. 1 second, please. All right, number 82, the applicant's primary discipline is visual arts and the pathway is social impact. The project concept, this artist wants to create 30 to 40 pieces, a 30 to 40 piece series for an exhibit to be focused on Black women and celebrities, including athletes. This project will address the lack of awareness of the general community regarding notable Black women and celebrities, including athletes in America and the world. The artist also wants to address ideas that artists can come from underserved communities, especially with people who were formerly incarcerated and struggled with homelessness and mental health. I think that sort of something that we've experienced a few times already, is that I'm not sure that there's quite enough information about the identification process of the subject matter. I think that the concept as a whole is really strong and could be really beautiful to execute. I also worry a little bit about the artist's ability to execute this project. I think that their craftsmanship and skill set in the creation of work could be honed in and mastered a little bit more before they can execute this, as the artist is trying to produce several elements to this project, including more beyond just the paintings. So strong overarching concept. I think that we're just missing a little bit of information and maybe a little bit of craftsmanship to be able to execute.
Yeah, I thought that the artist has done really comparatively well, considering that she's self-taught and has had a really tough life. And I thought one comment, I'm not sure I agree with her assertion that there's a lack of celebration or acknowledgement of Black women, celebrities, and athletes. I thought if anywhere, we know a lot of Black women and Black celebrities and athletes. So I know it's a marginalized community, but I think they've done, really well in that area.
Yeah, I kind of echo the selection of the subject matter of celebrity as an exploration point. I also said that more information on how the intended community will be engaged in the project would have made the proposal stronger. So I also feel like more information about engagement approaches and strategies with the actual community more information would have helped me understand this proposal a little bit better.
I echo that. I definitely noted that the project concept would have been strengthened with more detail about how the community will be engaged and impacted. I think I also echo what John said. When I read it, what hit me the hardest was the journey of the artist and the lack of how this artist had to kind of do it all on their own. And I factored that into the work samples provided and even the concept of the project itself, and the fact that this person is maybe at a disadvantage compared to some other artists due to the fact that they had to do this all on their own. So I factored that in as well, but I definitely wish there was more about community engagement during and after the execution of this project. And just to note about knowing a lot about like Black women and artists, celebrities and athletes and stuff. I noticed that too when I read it the first time. When I read back through it again, my understanding, and I might have been wrong about this and it will affect my score, so please share your thoughts, but my understanding was that they're arguing that there needs to be more awareness about the contributions of those individuals, not just acknowledging who they are. Did I read that incorrectly?
Yeah, contribution-wise, it just depends how deeply we're involved. And when we talk about, civil rights, Harriet Tubman, and celebrities, athletes, are you kidding? Like tennis players, Williams and all the best. I mean, they're all celebrated, they're acknowledged. I mean, they are all our cultural heroes in America. So, I mean, I agree that, as a, ethnic group, certain people of color are marginalized. But when she made that statement, I just thought, well, I mean, even as a non-Black person, I'm well aware of the predominance, of Black celebrities and athletes, worldly. But anyway, it's a minor point.
I think also, though, something should be said too about our conversation about the ambiguity in the proposal regarding that theme, because you're right, it really does, that would make a big change. And, I think that the statement should be, the project concept should be concise and direct and clear enough for us to be able to get that exact answer that we're looking for right here. Because I just reread it a few times too, and it's still a little vague.
Okay. can we finalize scores on this one and move to the next application, which is number 92, and Carla is taking the lead on this.
Okay, so for this one, the pathway is creation, and we're looking at visual arts. The work is carried out as part of the creation pathway and is twofold, incorporating both creation of art and production of accessibility features. Art creation will include production of 12 large two-dimensional archival pigment prints on photo rag paper mounted to aluminum panels. Incorporating accessibility features into the two-dimensional artwork is an emerging art field and will be an important pathway to allow community members of diverse abilities to experience the work. I felt as though the work samples were very they were very moving and strong. I'm a big I liked how the use of color and the way that the artist kind of worked with the medium and created something that I think connects to this idea of blindness was very well done. I also felt that the proposal was very strong and that they were very thoughtful in their engagement strategies and program designs. I also really appreciated that the artists shared a part of their personal narrative of having be semi-sighted and partial blindness and visual impairment. So I really appreciated how open they were about their own kind of narrative, and how that connection then translated into an art proposal that I felt was pretty well-rounded and well thought out.
I second what you said, almost everything, Carla. I also, just to add, is I think additionally the accessibility of this project was really compelling to me, regarding the lack of access of public art in public places, and that the artist was intended to make this work accessible to visually impaired community as well as bilingual community or multilingual community as well. I just thought it was a strong representation here with that, as well as the work being stunning.
Yeah, I wanted to add that the artist's reputation goes beyond Sacramento, including many parts of the U.S.
Yeah, and I will say, like, the samples were so strong that I was very compelled to learn more, and so that was. I mean, I stuck within the confines of the platform and the information provided, but they were so intriguing, and it made me want to learn more about the process, and it brought me into the experience. And so that's why I felt like, oh, this is something that should play out and happen, because already just through a digital kind of experience, I, as an outsider, felt drawn in. So it's powerful.
I do want to jump in and say that it is tempting to bring other information that we know about artists and their work to the process, but for this purpose, we always like to keep it to the application, and that's why we've asked people not to include links to their website, or I mean, there is always that desire to want to know more and want to see what they've done, or to bring our own personal information to the process. And it's probably best that for this purpose, we really stick to, what they've said and what they've brought to their application, so that, we have that playing field. Thanks.
Melissa, I do have a question. In regards to the community impact section, question, or part 2, the project concept is concerned or takes place in a disinvested community promise zone. When I did my analysis, I was looking specifically at that sheet and like kind of saying, okay, it's either on the low end, as in like 1 or 2, or it's on the 10 end where they're there. Is that a good assessment?
Yeah, I mean, that was the one that's really difficult because that's sort of although we had the scale, little evidence, satisfactory evidence, and strong evidence, that's one of the ones that, strong evidence might mean you've hit every single one of those indicators. Satisfactory evidence might be that you've hit at least one, and then little evidence is maybe you've hit none. That's an area where it's a little bit inexact. And again, that's just one of the indicators, but for us, community and place really does matter. And so to the degree that they could really mark those places. And for some of them, it just may be, this is where I live because my project is creation and I'm going to be in my home or in my studio creating. So an inexact science, but an important indicator and one that hopefully we can, keep working on to perfect.
Well, what about the concept of, them kind of getting a low score in that area because they are located in a, outside of promise zone, but they intend to work in areas or kind of share their work in areas outside of that. And I think like I was pretty like black and white with this one where it's like either one or the other.
Yeah.
But it's hard where like this one's a very strong proposal, but it scores low in that specific question. And that makes it, it's kind of frustrating for me because it's like, oh, I really would love to see this, but I understand that this is the foundation of the grant, it's kind of location within Promise Zone.
Yeah, I mean, it really is difficult. And we knew that when we formulated these guidelines in this rubric, that you're going to find really amazing projects that just don't necessarily fit communities that have been underinvested. I mean, we know that, and we're trying to make sure that we are investing more heavily in these communities and in the artists who live, work, and do everything there. That said, you have to use your own discretion when you're reading something and an artist is saying, well, I'm going to do my project in the Promise Zone, but if you've seen no evidence throughout any of their work that that's been part of it, just the mention of the Promise Zone, you have to decide whether you really feel like that's authentic to the proposal. And that's why we have panelists, and that's why we have so many of you, because you're going to come to it a little bit differently, but we want to make sure you're still looking at those guidelines and taking that into account. It does make it more difficult, but hopefully the rest of the proposal can also hit some of those other areas that are important to you. Okay, anything else about this one? If not, we can move to the next one, which is 96, and John is going to take the lead on that one.
Okay. In this application, the media stands and the pathway is performance and presentation. The description itself is really, you have to look back on what they did in 2019. Basically, they're repeating a 3-day event, which they did at the end of 2019, which was very successful and traveled outside the state as well. That one was called The Dreams Are Never Gone. And the one that they want to apply for, it's sort of on the same theme. And it's basically the event with to combat insecurity and doubts about creative individuals, and they essentially the one that they did in 2019, they did it on the theme as Her Power, which sort of focused on the women, which is a sort of represented group in the hip hop and dance world. They submitted a very fine video of one of the sort of well-known person that came out of that 2019 event, and that has gone to different places, within West Coast. And I basically feel that the applicant has a successful history of producing and touring events, and that they seem impactful beyond Sacramento, and that the next event should be built on a solid foundation.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I just felt that they should have provided more information on community engagement approaches, such as how are people going to learn about the event? Are there any potential partners? Just more information on how they're reaching their community would have made it stronger, but everything else I felt it sounds like a really awesome project.
Thank you. Any last comments, or we can move on to the next one?
I just wanted to add, I was hoping for some more information in the artist statement about the individual artist. The first time I read through the application, I think I was a little confused about the video provided versus the actual applicant. I just would have, I still think it was a very strong proposal. I was really blown away by this proposal, but it would have been nice to learn more about the person behind this.
Yeah, apparently the applicant is the organizer, so he's sort of the organizer and producer, and he has a team of people working. So from that aspect, as I said, the actual proposal of the project is very vague, and you have to, look back in the artist statement to see that they basically want to repeat, one that they produced a couple of years before, which had been successful, and apparently it's gotten a lot of mileage. But yeah, there's some vagueness about this application.
Okay, thank you. So final scores on that one. Then we'll, if everybody's okay, I was thinking about a break at 1:15. Does that work for y'all? Okay. All right. So we are right on schedule, so we're doing well. All right. Next one is 101, and that will be Carla.
Okay, so the artist will work with neighborhood organizations in the San Diego Promise Zone to develop a place-centric branded graphic icon or logo which will represent their neighborhood. They'll brainstorm concepts and imagery based on the history and spirit of their area in a series of public discussions and consensus building exercises. The community members will vote and draft designs to be revised into a final design. And then the artists will carve the final design in 3 sizes onto linoleum blocks and rubber stamps. I felt that the artists provided a lot of good narrative about themselves as an artist, and then their interests and background. I felt that it was a good proposal, that the artist thoughtfully crafted an experience that has a lot of community input and power sharing. It would have been good to know how community will learn about this project in order to attend and be active participants. Also, the artist mentioned the Promise Zone, but that was not indicated in the GIS results. So it was one of those where they're mentioning working in the Promise Zone, but not that's not necessarily indicated in the dots. I also felt that their work samples were good, and I I felt that they were good, but I would have liked to have seen some maybe different contexts that would show their ability to see this project through. Like maybe a few more with like, you know, having community members involved in a sort of discussion or something like that, if they had done that in the past.
And I just want to add, when you're talking about the Promise Zone, and these are just a note that they'd secured a partner in the Gardenland Northgate neighborhood, and that would be in the Promise Zone. I don't know if there are details provided around that, but in case you saw that neighborhood, that would qualify.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
One thing I would like to comment on this that I really did like was sort of this concept of commercialization or like what's the right word? I wrote commercialization, but as I said it out loud, I don't know if that's correct.
Branding,
you know, making sort of like the business entrepreneurial side of the arts and introducing that to community members as sort of like, okay, here is a way to make this a job. And I think that there's in my prior life, not to give too much, you know, we've tried to introduce to kids, you know, like graphic design as a career path or what it looks like to be sort of like a working artist outside of a studio. And I thought that was a really interesting way of, you know, bringing the press to the people, helping them design these logos as a community, and then seeing the final product on, you know, whatever type of a material they're working with. So I just thought it was an interesting way to kind of introduce that concept with the arts like this.
I thought this was a really good community building project. Part of it is the socialization, getting people involved in the businesses. I know I live in Oak Park, so I think over the years, it has really, the branding of Oak Park has really helped its image as well as, you know, the arts involved. And I think this is one way she wants to basically bring this to the people so they could come together and build solidarity and camaraderie, perhaps, about a neighborhood through branding of their business with logos. And I think it's a good thing for business entrepreneurial thing to have that kind of group, how do you say, group solidarity, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely, what stood out to me with this application, I think, Carla, you bring up often, like, how are folks going to be chosen? And it feels like when you were reading through, that was definitely a theme that was like pinned at the top, but right. And for me, it was community engagement before, during, and after the project. And I felt like this proposal, echoing what Kara said, I definitely like the print-a-thon idea. I think printing is a great segue for a lot of folks into arts that have not been exposed before. So I thought that was great, but I was not clear on the community impact after the completion of the project. So bringing folks together to make a brand for Sacramento that people recognize is really dope. But like after the print-a-thon's over and the project's over, what does that look like? And how does your, you know, how does your project impact in the longer term? I was not too clear on that. But I definitely liked this proposal, and I thought it was cool to make a Sacramento image and do a print-a-thon.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, having read through applications like this in the past, it's like, how do you reach out to those communities? And it's great that they listed the Northgate Neighborhood Association, and it's great to learn that that's in the Promise Zone. But like, are you working with business associations, you know, these 3 different communities? Like, what is the connection there? Are you familiar with different businesses already to get to kind of see this through? So it was more of like, I think the structure is very strong, but then the question is, how do you get folks in this industry actually present there? Like that was one of my, which I hope they're successful in doing it, but I would have liked to see some evidence of, you know, of some of that.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Finalize your scores. And next is number 103, and that'll be John.
Okay. This is under the category of design. The pathway is performance and presentation.
I'm sorry, can you restate the application number?
103.
103, sorry.
Yeah. The applicant wants to hold a fashion event, and they specify not just a fashion show or a market, but a true celebration of fashion in our region. They also want to perform that for himself and also make a portion of the funding provided to incubate a young designer collection to showcase along with mine and others, the young designer and so forth. But again, how do you choose this person? Those are the kinds of things about grant that it's hard for us to make, sort of objective qualification. But in any case, I felt that the history of the applicant is rather thin. The last activity that's shown was over a year ago. The resume does not support the execution of an ambitious project that has yet to fill many details. Again, there's not many details provided on, how this was going to happen. The field of fashion has a subjective impact that primarily on the maker and the wearer, and generally does not address social issues. And so I have maybe a little unresolved problem on my own about some sort of entrepreneurial things, especially when it comes to accessory fashion. They're generally for the consumer. I mean, art is all for the consumer, but does it really raise consciousness unless you have a specific idea of using upcycled material, and bringing the environmental aspect? When you're just designing fashion, it's difficult to find sort of public funding. At least that's my own attitude. So this I put as sort of a self development. But in any case, this is, I don't feel, is a very strong grant.
And just as a reminder that everybody who's here was all eligible. So all of these categories of making or creativity were all eligible. And clearly this specific grant does lean towards community impact. But just to clarify to everybody out there that fashion and design and all of these aspects are included, and then it's up to the artist to make a case to see where they fit in all of those other categories that we claim is important here.
I felt that the artist statement did a great job of describing the inspiration and the technique. I really enjoyed reading that statement. I wish it had more information about how the artist is furthering their discipline through their body of work, like more detailed information about that. I thought that was an important part of the important sub-question of the artist statement and section, and it would have given some insight, especially to John's point, with it being fashion and with this like subjective nature of fashion. Like it's the breakdown of the inspiration and technique was beautiful, and it would have just been nice to have followed up with maybe how their body of work has contributed. But overall, I actually liked this proposal, and I thought the project concept was strong, but it could be strengthened with more information about how the community will be engaged.
Yeah, I also felt that the work samples were great. I mean, they show such like so many people coming together to experience the designs, and that gave me a lot of like faith in the project. I also, I think John made this comment earlier, I wanted to know more about the selection process for the scholarship. So who are those, who are those designers, why, and what is that going to look like for them? I felt like that was kind of missing, and I think it's important to mention here because it's so much about building community. And when we think about sustainability of a project, that's how it exists here, is through that process. So that would have been good. But I also agree with Lula that I really liked this, and I felt that the designs were really fresh and nice.
Okay, well, thank you. And let's try to get one more in before we take our break. And the next one would be 106, and that's Carla.
Okay, so this is Creation Visual Arts, and the artist is proposing a creation of a book of Sacramento-based immigrant success stories and a series of painting illustrating their stories. Currently, the artist has 3 upcoming exhibitions to present the work. The work will also be available as a free digital download for the public. So they're kind of using their upcoming shows as a platform for sharing information about this book. The artist has a very strong resume. Their work samples were also very strong. And overall, I felt that the proposal was strong, that it would have been good to know how many participants would be included in the book. Sorry, there's a little fly here, so I'm trying to move it away. And yeah, I felt very confident in the proposal, and yeah, that's all I have to share.
I also thought the project concept was very unique and powerful, and I also appreciated how closely it was tied to community and highlights historically marginalized communities without making them subjects. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable to read folks' ideas of how they're going to tell someone else's story. I thought this did it with dignity and respect and depth, and I really enjoyed reading that project concept.
I have a little different take on this. Mostly I see a little mismatch between the project and the art samples, because the project mentions the focus would be on portraiture and storytelling, convey and the art sample, there's what's recognizable, maybe 1 or possibly 2, which could be classified as portrait. And there's no writing sample at all. So I don't have I know the person seemed to be, well qualified, so forth, but it's hard to make a judgment of how the portraits are going to look like, basing it on what's submitted. It's hard to make a judgment. Again, I don't see any writing at all in storytelling.
Yeah, I will say I noticed that as well, but I think I found confidence in, the kind of extensive history that they listed. Plus, I think that the work samples are very strong, although they're not all portraits. But also the artist mentioned that this is their first book. So that made me think that they may not have, I don't know, I guess I assume okay, give them kind of give confidence in what they're saying that they can execute versus what is indicated in their sample. But I agree with you, John, had they had, writing samples, that would have been fantastic to include, or more images of portraits. However, I still felt confident in it. And actually, I think, a lot of them are portraits, about half. So I still felt pretty confident in it, even though it wasn't like an actual book, because they don't have that or text.
Yeah, with reference to the conversation about portraits, I think that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are, they're just abstract portraits, not a traditional, subject matter, which I think kind of lends itself really nicely to like a literary context. We're so used to maybe seeing, bust, head as in a composition, but I think this sort of like abstracted, very clearly defined aesthetically representation of portraiture could be really interesting in that sort of setting.
I agree that there are recognizable faces, but I think the storytelling part is that every element of a painting should be intentional. When it comes to storytelling, I'm just trying to gauge if you're writing or portraying somebody of a different culture. What would you select as symbolisms or icons, to represent that culture, and some of that you need to get from the subject rather than impose it, on by yourself. So I'm really interested in, where the artist will get. I mean, how extensive is this interview with the subject, and through that conversation, will then the artist, select symbolism, whether it be religious, familial, or artistic, whatever. So that's what I'm looking at, and but yeah, it's okay. We'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
I do think. Oh. I do think that the visual storytelling that they present, especially looking at sample 2, where it's like one canvas and then it's like 3 canvases that piece together an individual, that to me is very powerful. And I hear you too, John, that it's the artist style and their kind of depiction, and how do you take that kind of subjective take and then try to add in this, these narratives of these different stories. But I feel like, again, like I mentioned before, I feel confident in their ability to do it, especially just because even within one, the one portrait that I've mentioned, there's a lot going on. There's a lot visually to take out and storytelling. So, but I mean, maybe some text.
Yeah, but perhaps what I'm just trying to say is, I think I looked upon the idea of visual images relatability. There's no doubt that this artist is qualified, and his work, are, excellent. It's just, the topic of discovery. So relatability, I think, is very important to me. When something could be too abstract, you need a lot of words. And in this case, I don't see too many words. So yeah, let's leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't want us to go too long on any one application. And I just want to say a couple of overriding comments that aren't specific to this application, but maybe address some things that have been coming up all along, that, we really did encourage emerging artists to apply for this grant. And, you'll also be looking for what you think is promise. What would a grant provide as an opportunity for someone who you feel has great promise? So please keep that in mind when you're doing your scoring, that it's not just, I mean, clearly the resume is important, or the number of years perhaps plays a factor in how you are scoring, but also that having, a shorter time span working shouldn't be a disadvantage to working in something for many years. You're really looking at the project concept and their ability and their desire to really carry something interesting out. And sort of the other comment is, when you get into philosophical discussions like you just have, which I think are really interesting, I'm going to force you to go back to the rubric so that we take all of some of these other things out of the equation and say, are they fulfilling for me these different areas of the rubric, and which is your scores are very clearly based on community impact and technical skills and, whatever we put in the rubric, and, location and things like that. So So if you're in doubt, go back to the rubric and see where they fit in that area. And I just also want to say for everybody who is out there today listening to your applications being reviewed, thank you for coming, and I hope it's really useful to you. And please remember that there were over 400 applications and you have landed in the top 100, which means everybody's application today hit a high note for a majority of panelists. And it's the hard part right now is now getting down to the nitty gritty of getting to the last 45. So please remember that you are all at the very top of our scoring list. So, and with that, like a break, would you like 5 minutes or 10 minutes? What feels? 10 minutes. All right, 10 minutes. You can turn your cameras off, just sort of stay with us. Turn your sound off, turn your cameras off, and we will see you at whatever. 1:34 is 1:35, and that's Carla.
Okay, so this is the Pathways creation. The form of art is visual arts, and the artist will produce, film, and edit a new documentary film about gun culture in America. And just to provide a little background on the artist, they mentioned that they're a filmmaker and photographer who focuses on people who live at the fringes of society. I really appreciated that they shared a part of their personal history, which is that they have an eye disease, which causes vision loss in their right eye. And so they have a distortion in colors and shape. And that made them appreciate the world around them in a different way. They also talked about being first-generation American, a child to immigrants from El Salvador, and through that experience, it felt that they understood this concept of otherness. So I liked their introduction, their artist statement, and I felt that their work sample was good. You know, it was a strong work sample that had good indication of documentary skills. Some of my notes were that it was a good holistic take on a big topic. As always, my thing is more information on how individuals will be selected. So again, the criteria behind the subject matters would have been good to know. Also, more information on the final screening. I don't think that was indicated. And I also wonder about, you know, when we think about community and gun violence, and you know, some of this stuff was about marginalized communities. I guess I wanted to understand like what marginalized communities within this topic of gun violence. Like I know those connections, but maybe I missed it. And maybe my fellow panelists can share a little bit about that, but I would have liked to know like what within gun violence is explored in this greater concept of marginalized communities.
I agree. Carla, I had a hard time understand. I mean, to address guns in your work is it just felt like it was a big bite, and the breakdown of how this was going to happen. I mean, they mentioned that they're not going to take a position and that they're going to present the information. And then I think there's even a mention of the different, well, without going into that detail, I guess I had a hard time understanding when you say something as general and as big as guns, to your point about which marginalized communities, but also like, if you're not taking a position, not that the position is necessary, what angle exactly are you approaching this topic from? That was not clear.
Yeah, I also found, I agree with all of what y'all just said. I also think that, you know, while the project itself was written out pretty sufficiently, I wasn't super impressed with the craftsmanship. And I felt like to address these kinds of issues, the craftsmanship will need to be executed seamlessly. And I sort of felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add that the devil is always in the detail. Again, we don't, what the duration of this, how the finished product might be publicized or promote to maximize the impact, even if you could cover this huge, topic of guns, or not just gun violence. I mean, the person even mentioned, oh, well, people, use guns to hunt too. Well, yes, but, and there's also no plans. It's just we're going to make it free online. Well, that's not really a plan or strategy for promotion or maximizing of impact. So again, those details are important because otherwise, you can say generalities. Anybody can do that, but where's the proof that you're well along the way, or you thought about some really difficult choices you have to make about limiting the scope of your exploration or anything of that nature.
Thank you. Thanks for those comments. All right, moving on, 146, Carla.
Okay, so this artist is doing a performance presentation under visual arts. So they will deliver a story-driven digital media arts class at-risk youth in Sacramento. Funding from this request will provide a program to train youth to develop their story content in video format. I felt that their artist statement was very informative. It showed that they were kind of committed to the work. I also felt that their work sample was very strong and I enjoyed watching it. In regards to the project concept, I wrote that it was a very holistic proposal all around. The artist understands providing extra support like mental health and substance abuse prevention services for their intended community and sustainable monetary support for the project. So they were thinking about it in two angles, like how to support the at-risk youth through kind of the project and through these extra support systems such as substance abuse, but also in general, the longevity of their project. They talked about the project having a life beyond this, which was really wonderful to read. It also, that indicates a good understanding of the needs and efforts to extend longevity of the project. There's also good evidence of strong impact. So I felt in general, this was a very strong proposal. Yeah, everything was really good in my eyes.
I agree. This was definitely one of the strongest ones that I read, and during the process, I was really blown away by how detailed and clear the project concept was, and the highlighted issues and concerns, and especially how the project will engage with those. And to your point, Carla, the longevity after. I think the only thing that I was on the fence about was I was looking through the work samples, which I enjoyed also, and the CV, and I just didn't see any like demonstrated previous experience in running a class. So that's the only thing, but it didn't deter me from really being blown away by this proposal.
Do you guys know whether the Youth Center has explicitly approved the collaboration? Because
I would just say if there's not a letter, then you can't make an assumption. And I know a lot of times people will have a strong intention, and some of them will just have a stronger connection to these locations than others. But sometimes we just don't know that. And we didn't ask them for letters of support, to be fair. We asked them where they intended to do it. So it's kind of up to you to decide whether you feel like there might be already a strong enough connection in community that would make you feel like that's going to happen. But you're going to have to make that determination if there's no specific.
Well, that's the question I looked at, because I could see in their history is a little thin, but the last collaboration or with the Sac Youth Center was in August, on a short film premiere, because so much of this proposal is dependent on this collaboration,
Mhm.
And that's why the details, the devil's in the detail. We can't assume that, you gotten, approval for this collaboration. So
I think in general, our job is, if you feel like you have 45 projects that you're excited about and want to move forward, our job as the Office of Arts and Culture is to then check in with those 45 artists to make sure that all the ducks are in a row and that the project concept as defined, we can get clearer on it once they know they have funding. And our job is also to kind of help facilitate moving things forward. Again, whether or not that weighs in your decision making or not, but our expectations were not that they would have everything in line. My big, sort of comment to everybody, and we've talked about that even in our prep, was, if you feel like something feels authentic because you've seen evidence in some other way, then feel free to look at that as something that you feel like the intention is there to move it forward. If it feels like there's a really big disconnect between what an artist would like to do and maybe their previous relationships or working community, then maybe that's something you might call into question a little bit more. But we're trying to give people the freedom to stretch themselves and to sometimes move out of their comfort zone, even though we'd like them also to be successful in it. But these projects are about giving people some of the resources to stretch themselves. I don't know that helps in this particular instance, but just it's a general thought.
I just don't want to encourage wishful thinking when there's no evidence.
Yeah.
I think I kind of fell back on the concept that they said the program will take place. It's not like it might take place. Like, they kind of use a strong word. And in addition to that, they say, we want to include a new video curriculum to youth. So I think that kind of those words of will and then we kind of created some affirmation, but that's just me, kind of leaning into the words themselves and kind of giving them, the benefit of the doubt. But I think, we're all different, so we might all feel differently about that.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to push you a little bit to kind of keep moving on so that we can get through everybody today. But again, feel free to always revisit your comments and your scores as we go through this process. And the next one is 147, and John is taking the lead to introduce this one.
Okay, hold on. 147 is under creation, and discipline is music. My computer's slow. Okay, the applicant wants to write, record, mix a collection of 8 to 10 songs in the form of a EP. With the guidance of Let's Go Sax Studio team, 4 to 6 songs will be released as singles. Basically, they want to address issues of hate, division, hypocrisy, blame and anger, and there's a lot of sort of feel good things on here. But my comments on this is it's an average proposal for self-development and production with little impact on others except consumers. The project mentions videos, but no samples were submitted. So others can add on to that.
I noticed the same. John, I agree with you that although I felt that the artist statement painted a clear picture, I felt that the project concept maybe wasn't as clear, specifically when it came to the community engagement and impact beyond what you highlighted. So yeah, you're not alone in that thought. That was definitely something that gave me pause.
Anybody have anything else they want to add? Okay, we can move on to the, excuse me, the next one is 148. And Lula's gonna lead.
I was muted again, my apologies. 148, so this project is called the Dare to Be Different Media Arts Program. And it will be a 60-minute after-school program elective with 4 participating schools per week. And the program is a mentorship program and a writing development course for inner city youth in Sacramento. The program will produce a 50-page student-written poetry book at the conclusion of the program. I felt that the project concept described a clear connection to community engagement and development. I appreciated how detailed the project was, down to exactly what is going to be happening and how many participants, and compared to many other applications that I read with similar approaches to community engagement, it wasn't as thorough. I appreciated the details and the numbers. I also appreciated that it engaged in cross-sector exploration, public health through mental health awareness, and also education. I also felt that the work samples provided showed the technical skill that support the experience described in the artist statement. I was conflicted because I know this has been brought up before, so we don't spend too much time on it, but this is definitely an application where the applicant doesn't score very highly on the GIS spreadsheet, but their description of what they're going to be doing definitely aligns 100%. So I'm going to have to, based on our earlier conversation, go back and maybe change my score.
Yeah, same. I think that was my same thing.
I took that in consideration already.
No, definitely.
Yeah, my comments are general, but this is a very positive project with a hopeful message from an honest and empathetic artist, great samples of art and support material.
Great.
Okay. Any other comments on the oak?
I just have a question. So I know you mentioned that out of the 40, we may, a few, we'll have to, if some fall out, then you'll tap into those remaining. Mm-hmm. If at the end you have, let's say, we have the top 40 and then the other ones that are right below, let's say the 5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. If those all have the same number score, how will you determine which one of those get like kind of the next thing? Is it, do we make a recommendation now?
You would make a recommendation at the end of the 2 days of panel. So you're not even going to look at these scores again until we do. Well, you're a little bit different, but we're going to do something at the very end where we're going to show all the final scores when you've been able to look at everything and have totally finalized your scores. It's up to 45 we're funding, but we will pick some alternates. It should go down the list. We will want to look to make sure that we've included every, every discipline that's being represented that, at least falls in the top percentile, so that we're able to make sure that there's some diversity in disciplines and pathways in the final group. So I don't know if that answered your question, but we will literally go through the list of scores. But again, you will have the opportunity up until the very end to modify your scores as you see fit.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, where are we now? That was 148, so we are on 154. And
that's mine.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Okay, this is The discipline is music, and the pathway is creation. This is an immigrant artist who goes through, again, the acculturation identity experiences that most cross-cultural people go through. Since then, he's made a 218, he's had a album. He wants to do a sequel, I think, a self-empowerment. He wrote, all the materials and the projects and so forth. Let me see what I have to say about him. Again, I feel this is a proposal for self-discovery and self-development. And the project has a limited as impact as presented. The artist is young and shows good promise. Other than that, I don't think there's anything I wanted to add.
Anybody else have something they want to add?
I think what I added was that I liked the work sample. It was really that it was a good work sample. It would have been good to know more details on how the community will engage with the production of the music. So I think they may have, I'm looking back at it right now. Virtual concert held at a large broadcasting studio. Live stream performance. So I think a part of it for me was like, how do people know about it? How are you reaching out? How are you spreading the word? So a little bit more details on that would have helped me kind of understand, but I still thought that it was a strong proposal.
Okay, thank you. And the next is 159, and that's Kara.
Great. Let's see here. Applicant number 159. The primary discipline is visual arts, secondary discipline, multidisciplinary arts, and the pathway is social impact. The project concept as outlined by the artist is, the project is designed to teach members of the Sacramento community to create works of art that will be shared. It will be carried out as 3-hour workshops over the course of 20 sessions. These workshops are free to attend. For the curriculum, I will instruct participants through the process of creating Papagami, helping them conceptualize and execute their ideas into something tangible. So this Tapagami is a created art form by the artist, is my understanding. That is 2 different kinds of art forms, blending tape and origami. Did anybody else see that this was beyond the artist's fabrication?
That is what he's claiming, yeah.
Right. So essentially, changing a traditional medium and turning it into something new, I guess, contemporizing. I thought that it was an interesting project. I liked that there was a lot of these classes. The proposal seemed to be really fleshed out in relation to the grant guidelines. I was interested in the workshops themselves, but I wanted to learn more about what happens to the final product from the workshops. I felt like there was kind of a missed opportunity for further engagement, further exhibition, education and interaction with the medium or the project once it was completed. Yeah, that's kind of where continued education on that.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was an innovative way to create art, both as an individual and then also as a collective group. And it's interesting that the artists seem to have a greater reputation outside Sacramento, including other nations. And my thought was maybe it's time for him to shine locally.
Okay, if there are no other comments, then we're going to move on to the next one. And that would be 166, also Kara.
Yeah. Okay, so applicant number 166, the primary discipline is visual arts and the pathway is performance presentation. The project concept, in the words the artist, is to facilitate 5 monthly sessions at 2 nursing facilities, 10 total, that are multi-generational family day events. The sessions cater to a range of physical and cognitive abilities and focus on building relationships among participants. And it also goes into talk about the relationships with where they're hoping to host these workshops. You know, I thought that there was a lot of really great elements to this proposal. I was particularly interested in the concept of art therapy and how this artist used their background sort of in that field to create this unique, these series of sessions. I liked that it was, you know, working with one demographic and trying to sort of create this connection to another community. I thought that there was a lot of really interesting elements to this proposal, but I sort of felt a little bit like it fell flat in some categories with regard to the grant requirements and the potential in which this proposal could have been submitted.
Okay, any other thoughts or additional comments?
Yeah, I agree with Kara. I thought that it was very thoughtful and there's definitely indication of impact. And I think it was one of the only ones that really focused on this idea of, I think it's like addressing ageism, which I thought was really kind of unique to the full group. But I also felt that just some more information would have been helpful to include.
Yeah, I think the artist is self-taught. I just mentioned that she seemed to love teaching as much as she is passionate about her therapeutic practice. And I do think that I think there's a lot of sometimes art classes in senior homes and so forth, but they don't involve the family.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think it's really important because it is family time, you know, for the elderly, and probably, you know, the art brings a lot of that kind of warmth, if you will. But I do agree that, you know, the person is not necessarily, you know, trained as an artist. And I like this. I think there's a lot of heart in this application. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Next is 167, Kara.
Excuse me. So let's start with applicant 167. They are an applicant in the discipline of visual arts, and the pathway is creation. The project project concept is as follows. If awarded a Seeding Creativity grant, I plan to create a new series of paintings and drawings that reflect my ongoing deep examination of my racial identity while exploring unexamined moments in American history. I think it is also worth noting, a part of this, for one of the concepts, I want to explore how being white has morphed over time and how that has affected my family and changed my family. So I kind of had a lot of thoughts on this application. Starting with the work samples itself, I thought the work were strong paintings. It looks like, based on the artist's history, that they have experience with poetry and have a pretty solid resume. So their work has been viewed around the world, it appears. I was a little uneasy, maybe, or I don't know how to describe my reaction to their personal artist statement. Examining their whiteness in how it affects their work and their family and their history. It sort of rubbed me the wrong way almost, and I felt like the artist's background and I believe it's male, John, I think is his name, Jeff. I think he could have maybe address that in a less overt way. It just seemed a little on the nose, and especially with regard to the subject matter in his work samples, it kind of just, I didn't see the correlation, and it seemed a little performative, maybe. But with that being said, I thought that the statement or the project the project concept was interesting and did hit a lot on programmatic offerings and community engagement, as well as accessibility of the final outcome. So I don't know, maybe it was just sort of a personal reaction to the work and the statement. I think that I was having that I had a hard time analytically, surveying the piece or this body work. Sorry.
Yeah, I would just add that I think I wrote more information on how community will be engaged in this project would have made the proposal stronger. The artist is exploring a difficult project, so it's important to bring the community along throughout the process. Additionally, whether their engagement approaches is the artist employing. So I think one of the issues is, like, when we talk about race, especially when we're looking at the concept of whiteness and kind of doing self-reflection, it's important to navigate that in a very sensitive way and to bring community along in a way that is thoughtful and fruitful. And I kind of struggled with it as well, because it is a concept that I think we don't see. We kind of see the other narratives, and in that way it was unique. But also it's like how is he how are they how are they exploring this concept in a way that does not that deals with this difficult subject matter with sensitivity and grace and all of that? And I didn't see evidence of that.
Thank you for being so articulate about that, Carla.
I don't think I was articulate at all. So jumbling, but thank you.
Yeah. Are we kind of broadly talking about maybe feelings towards cultural appropriation? Because what I hear from this artist, I mean, he admits he's white, and he starts with a premise to say, most works on the subject of people of color are done by, people of color. And why can't I do that? And I feel good about that in the sense that, I was a person born in another country. I came here, as a person of color. I had to, consume or expose to, a lot of things that weren't the root of my country from where I come. So in that sense, I've come to appreciate, admire, enjoy, all these things that I have to offer. But if I should begin to participate as a creator, am I free to do it in the black, what if I started painting, black heroes? Would you feel the same if I was white or otherwise?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, I see what you're saying. It's like, they're depicting they're exploring the race that they identify with. And, it's not like they're telling other stories, they're telling the stories of their own identity. I think it's just, I think that because culturally we are kind of bringing up stories of marginalized communities, like that's kind of a big theme within the scoring rubric, but also within like our, nation. It's like when you start refocusing the attention on whiteness, which has been predominant in the past, it's like, it kind of doesn't really resonate with where we are, but also like within the rubric of marginalized communities. So while I think it's an interesting concept to explore, I just wonder like the appropriateness of that within the application, but also I'm really like, just like how are you going to carefully navigate this conversation, that sort of thing. So I don't know, those are just my thoughts. I do, again, like extremely strong work samples. I like that they're kind of bringing up something, kind of opening up a different conversation. But I struggle with like approach and how they're going to do it in a way that isn't off-putting to people in a time where the conversations have, we've been illuminating different stories, right? So just kind of wondering the navigation of that.
I love this discussion, and I'm gonna cut us all short here because I'm trying to get us through the day, but thank you. These are really interesting comments and a really interesting approach to looking at these applications, and that's what you're here to do. So unless somebody has something totally different that they feel like they need to get out, I think we're gonna move on to the next one. And that is 178. Carla.
Okay, so the artist, this is Social Impact Visual Arts. And the artist explains that they themselves grew up in the foster care system and that has greatly shaped their work. They are interested in abstract, murals, and mixed media. And then their project concept is they would like to teach art classes to minorities, specifically foster youth between the ages of 13 and 18. The project would be targeted for foster youths that are in low-income areas in Sacramento area. I felt that it was a very good proposal, that it is evident that the artist knows the community very well and can connect with the youth. And I think that that's indicated in their statement. There's a lot of good evidence of thoughtful engagement strategies. I would have liked to know how they hope to reach the students and potentially a list of organizations that they intend to partner with, just because, finding foster care youth requires, kind of working with different agencies. And so it's thinking about like, well, what agencies do you have in mind, and providing some information on that, whether, even if it's not solidified, would have been good. I also really appreciated their work samples. I like that it includes both them as artists, so their artwork, but also a few of them working with students, so that it shows kind of a commitment to the project concept.
Anyone want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I have questions about this one as well. Again, on detail, such as how many classes, how long would they be, how the students will be recruited. Also, I noticed that the artist samples, I think he implies that he can teach in many different styles. And I see his work essentially as one style, rather abstract and Afrocentric. he's primarily going to be teaching, but his history of experience does not emphasize teaching experience. I mean, there's a lot of shows, and so those are unanswered questions.
And no, I also noticed, John, to echo what you just said, that there wasn't details about previous experience with teaching, but I also wanted to point out that we've gone through a few other applications where folks have expressed that they're going to do some kind of class or teaching, and they also didn't have experience in there. Just for the sake of fairness, I think.
Sure. Understood.
Yeah.
I also wonder, because the photos indicate that they are, I mean, it looks like the instructor, right? Like the artist working with the students. So I wonder if maybe like, I don't know, to me, that was an indication versus like the, the listing of history.
Yeah, there's actually, there are only, there's two. Yeah, there are a number of photos. There's one that shows another person painting in a different style. But if you look at number 2, you see that basically, all the canvases, display, shows almost like a, paint by number kind of thing. And I don't know how I feel about that. So in that case, he's really kind of, this is my style. So, learn to paint my way. And I have a little issue with that.
I mean, it might be a good sort of overall comment to applicants who do propose kind of teaching projects, is when they're listing their work history, professional history, to maybe add that. I mean, sometimes it's just an oversight, or just, for many artists, this is the first time they've done an application like this. So there are areas where people are going to maybe miss something that they don't realize is going to, resonate with a panel. Yeah. So I just think these are just good things for everybody to pay attention to when you're trying to show your breadth of work.
Yeah, really it's the claim made. If you say, I paint in an impressionistic style, and this is what I want to, instill in my students, that's fine. But if you say, well, I can, guide them in whatever style they want, and then you're only showing work in one style, then, I question that claim.
Okay. All right, then I think if we're ready to move on to 179, Carla.
Okay, so 179 is creation and visual arts. The artist identifies as a contemporary and Afrofuturism visual artist, exploring matriarchy, prosperity, navigation, spirituality, and technology. They mentioned that they recently started experimenting with virtual reality and digital art. Hence, the proposal is a VR coloring book. The virtual reality coloring book combines their passion for cultural, visual art, and mental health advocacy. The project is supported by over a decade of experience in their chosen career as a visual artist. It also relates to their formal education in psychology and certification as a community health worker. So some of my thoughts is that it was a very thought out project. There is good indication of community being integrated into the process. I like the kind of fusions of sectors, and also the integration of technology, which I think that was kind of unique to this applicant pool. I did mention, I wonder what the engagement and marketing strategies are, since social media is not always accessible. So that's one thing, is that, they mentioned social media as being kind of the method of getting the word out, but not everyone's on social media. So kind of questioning that. And then also, since their work samples only includes kind of like 2D acrylic works. And I guess actually, now that I look at it, I guess their video might have, their video is digital. So I take my comment back. Never mind. I was going to say I wanted to see more examples of tech and art, but I see now that that's indicated in this video. So never mind. I think more indication though of tech and art would have been good.
Yeah, this technology is really new to the applicant, so I'm not sure, the artist is ready to impart skills on that. I thought the art samples were fairly average, but it would be a great thing if you could, do virtual reality, within there's such a, high sort of technical dimension, to the field, especially, for underserved or promised communities. That would be a great service.
Yeah, I think that was my other thing is with VR, that adds in this extra element of expense and, even like sanitary things, like depending on like the type of devices you use and all of that. And so it is something where I kind of wondered like the logistical aspects of integrating technology into the art form and how then that gets distributed to community and stuff like that. So I think a little bit more information would have really helped.
Okay, anyone else have a comment? Okay, then we're ready to go to 184. Carla.
Okay, so the artist identifies as Latinx. They are an educator and artist. They make photographs, and then the project, I'm sorry, this is creation and visual arts. Their project is a photo series that connects stories of people and places with photographs physically made from the landscapes. Photo series that connects stories of people and, oh, sorry, I just repeated myself. So that's, that is the idea, is taking a photograph of a person in the landscape. The artists, some of my comments is that the artist is exploring cross-sector exploration in their artwork. The project is very dynamic. It would have been good to include kind of interviewees and subject matter selection. So again, what is the criteria for selecting your subjects and the locations and that sort of detail. And I felt that their work samples were strong. They were good. They provided kind of, this element of storytelling and visuals.
Yeah, I agree with everything Cara said, and I also mentioned that it's a very detailed proposal, complete with timeline and methodologies, used, which, it's nice to see when, it's reassuring that everything is provided. And I agree with the good art samples.
I felt that the project concept mentioning the community engagement through the interviews was a strong point, but I didn't see clarity in the connection between those interviews and the final tangible outcome. I think a little bit more of a direct connection would have helped me understand the project better.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to number 190, and this is going to be John.
The discipline is dance, and the pathway is performance and presentation. Okay. This is a pretty difficult one. Let me see. Let's start with a comment. Uh-oh, I'm losing. The detailed proposal complete with time. Oh, I'm in the old one, I'm sorry. 190.
If somebody else wants to jump in while you're getting your bearings.
Yeah, somehow my computer.
Sure, I can jump in for now and just kind of go over the basics. So yeah, so it's applicant 190, dance and performance presentation. So the artist mentions in their artist statement that the work is inspired and influenced by the stories of others, as well as the story their life has formed. They're an abuse survivor, so that plays a role in their art form. And then the project concept is the work will carry out is an original dance and drama collaborative focused on mental health awareness. So it's doing a performance to address mental illness. They mentioned that the project is heavily community focused. And they provide a lot of details on how they do that. And they also mentioned that they're exploring issues of cancel cultural and mental health. John, are you ready?
Yeah, I don't want to go into the details mostly, but I find a sort of discrepancy between what they propose. Again, mental health and cancel culture are not necessarily related, so I'm not sure how they will explore that together. But I noticed that the work of the artists, the past works, are mostly in music theater. So it's very difficult to gauge the impact also when there is really no public forum to explore these things. And it just kind of mentioned that, they're going to offer free tickets for the financially needy. So I find quite a lot of, disconnections on this particular application.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I felt like free doesn't equal accessible. So like it's, what is it? What beyond giving free tickets are you kind of doing? But also, when I heard cancel culture, it was the first time that I think it's in, it's kind of at the end of the application. And correct me if I'm wrong in that regard, but there wasn't really like an elaboration on what that means and how that's being explored. And I feel like a lot of the emphasis was on mental health, and that was kind of worked out. But then this word was thrown out, which carries a lot of weight. So like, what does that mean in the context of your artwork? It wasn't really identified. So it kind of left me with like kind of missing a gap there, or having a gap, sorry.
Yeah, it's on the idea of authenticity. I mean, your past work and then you throw in this sort of buzzword. So it doesn't work for me. I'm sorry.
Anybody else have anything they want to add about this application? Okay, then we are ready to move to 195, Carla?
Okay, so this is Creation Visual Arts. The artist makes print and zines using found materials, the written word, image editing programs, drawings, and paintings. They explore non-binary experiences. So they're looking at gender as viewed through our society. And they also mention that they live with a disability. So they're also navigating kind of they're exploring this idea of the medical industrial complex as a queer cancer patient. I really super appreciated how vulnerable they were in their statement and how they kind of revealed aspects of themselves. And some of my notes were, I'm sorry, in regards to the concept itself, the artist said that they will create a body of prints that explore their ongoing journey as a young adult queer transgender cancer patient. They will be making prints and zines about the experiences, and then also having some community engagement involved. I felt that it was a very strong proposal that was artfully and thoughtfully crafted. The artist considers and centers their project around their community. And an example of that is providing free printmaking and zine workshops for their communities and others. There is a lot of evidence of interdisciplinary interest in art, healthcare, accessibility, and more. And it makes the project very dynamic and the impact potential very deep, just because they have so many tentacles out there. And I feel like they're exploring it in a way that doesn't feel like messy, but actually is very concentrated and directed and holistic.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for a project that seems to have quite a lot of sort of subject points, I think they did a really nice job of writing a concise proposal that outlined how they were hoping to hit all of those measurable points. I was really impressed with this proposal. I really liked it.
I would also say they did mention that they might, I think I read it somewhere. I'm having difficulty finding it right now. You know, that they would have to do events that are low risk because of the, you know, being immuno compromised. And so I liked that they kind of brought that up. It would be good also for them to have mentioned maybe that they would do things online if, you know, they needed to protect themselves or others. But I did like that they were kind of, you know, that they were vulnerable in expressing that and offering, you know, kind of pathways of still reaching people in a way that's low risk to the artists and caring about their safety. So.
Okay, I'm gonna move us along because again, I'm trying to be mindful of time. So thank you. And we are going to number 200, and that's gonna be Lula.
Applicant number 200. The discipline is media arts and the secondary discipline is design. The pathway is social impact. This project is called LightGrid. It's a community studio pilot program designed for students to participate in the production of professional quality videos and photographs. And if I'm correct about this application, the work samples are examples of this in action. So I think it's a continuation of an existing project. That is my understanding. The project includes behind the scenes collaboration for participants and also on camera content creation experience. This will involve 100 plus participants, which is 100 youth and their mentors and leaders over the course of 10 field trips to this studio. My thoughts on it were the artist's professional history uniquely positioned them to complete the project with the technical skill and community foundation needed to execute it. I was a little confused and would have appreciated a little bit more detail about what's new or different, or if this is an extension of an already done project or an existing project. It goes back to our conversation about the bag that we had earlier. Is this something that exists already that's being expanded on? I think a little bit of clarity on that would have helped. Also, the project concept is deeply rooted in community experience, and I appreciated the level of detail in explaining exactly how many community members will be impacted and how, and over the course of how many events. So that was helpful in understanding the project, and the work samples are strong and directly related to both the artist statement and the project concept.
Yeah, I would just add, I was a little confused because it says that the pilot program is designed for students to participate, supporting the organization's unique mission. And so when I saw organization, I'm like, is this an artist or is it are they like representing an organization? So that was, I didn't understand the structure of the applicant. Is it an individual artist or an organization?
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. I had trouble understanding if the organization was then LightGrid, and does LightGrid stand on its own, or is the community studio the organization and LightGrid is a project? I agree with you. There's definitely some clarity.
Yeah, and that's something that came up with a number of applicants, and we did try early on in the application process to go back to them whenever there was an example where it seemed more of an organization or a collective or an entity. to really start defining it down to the individual level. Knowing that we only fund individuals for this program, everything that they do has to be a project of theirs. But sometimes the boundaries are a little unclear.
But that said, this isn't an organization. This was deemed a kind of.
This would deem the artists themselves would be receiving the award and doing it. You know, I mean, some artists have their own companies or their own brands or whatever that they do, but it's going to be still an individual stipend. Remember, these are stipends for them to complete their work. So sometimes it may feel a little fuzzy. They are all technically eligible. So it's up to you to decide whether you feel you saw the strength in their work as an individual. That's the difficulty.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, my only addition to this may be that I said that it seemed to combine some of the best qualities of STEAM, you know, rather than STEM, to enable professional production with limited training.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Then we're ready to move to the next one, which would be 203. Lula, that's you again.
Okay, thank you. To applicant number 203, the discipline is design with secondary discipline of craft. The pathway is creation. And this proposal is recycling and fashion. So it's creating a line of garments and purses with a gallery event and a fashion show to continue to teach affordable, upcycled craft classes. The grant would also provide help with studio space, increased equipment, and production costs to execute the fashion show and creating the line of garments and purses. I thought this proposal was very interesting. Excuse me, I just lost my spreadsheet, 1 second. I thought this proposal was very interesting. I thought the work samples demonstrated the artist's unique approach to design using the recycled materials. I thought the work samples were trendy and fashionable, and the approach to creating them is very interesting. The project concepts, educational component highlighted the intended long-term community impact for the project, so I appreciated that. And yep, well, that's my comments.
I would only add that I would like to know more about their intended community. So like what's the context behind them? But everything else I agree with Lula.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm gonna move us on then to, where are we? Number 204. You're up again.
Thank you. So 204, the discipline is multidisciplinary arts and a secondary in literary arts. The pathway is social impact. So this applicant will facilitate a series of 5 2-hour hybrid group workshops. This will include up to 10 poets in person and 10 poets virtually. The workshops will carry out particular functions, concept development, ethical storytelling, story structure and editing, choreography, and hybrid presence. The functions are tied to the poets' activism goals, raising awareness about social inequalities, and building communities that are healthy and politically empowered. And the participating poets will be paid for their participation. The amount, I think the amount's $50. The poets will be paid. So I felt that the project concept was clear, but it would have been strengthened by adding more detail about how the longstanding relationships with venues and project visibility will engage and impact the community. And I also felt that the work samples provided demonstrated the technical skill needed to execute this project. So I didn't feel like this person was proposing a project they couldn't follow through on.
Okay, anybody want to add anything else, something different? Okay, then we can move on to number 207. And Carla, you're going to be leading that.
Okay, so the discipline is research, or no, the pathways research, the discipline is visual arts. The artist captures and integrates paradoxes and seemingly contradictions that they have felt growing up in the church, as well as their own personal Korean identity. Their research proposal is to collect stories of immigration among Asian communities through the study of papermaking and natural dyes. If funded, they will investigate local plans for natural dyes and papermaking. They will design and conduct a series of free papermaking and/or natural dye workshops for Sacramento-based Asian women. I thought that the proposal was very strong. The artist examines many cross-disciplinary sectors. There's good evidence of social and historical impact. So both on the research end, but also on the end of creating an artwork and engaging the public. And then one of my questions was, I wonder how the research will exist beyond the project. So it seems like they're doing a lot of collecting of data, and it would be great to know if they intend to, take that and publish it somewhere, just because it would be unfortunate if they didn't. And then the last thing I would say is that their work samples were very strong. I really just aesthetically thought that they were very beautiful and very powerful. And I also appreciated that they were working with, fabrics and creation of dyes. So something, I don't think it's the only time we saw this in this applicant pool, but it was definitely one of the few. So that was great to read.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, Carla. I think that another thing that was really interesting to me was like, it's less overt, but the sort of cross-sector reference to creating natural dyes, with regard to the environment and sustainability. I think that would come out as the project evolved more, but the artist didn't really put it forward in their statement, which is fine. I just thought that was a really interesting sort of like underlying theme that would be fun would be nice for this project to explore. And I just really thought that it was a beautiful, strong, solid, concise proposal.
Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the next one, which is 210. And John, you are leading on that one.
I'm sorry, I had problem with my computer. I'm off of my filter. 210.
Okay, if you can you find 210? Or we could ask somebody else to jump in and do an introduction while you get back on.
Yeah, I'm trying to select now 210. Yeah.
Do you want me to start?
Okay, I think I have it here. Yeah, it's really slow.
Why don't we let Carla do an introduction and then you can pop in with your comments?
Yeah, please.
Thank you.
So 210, music, discipline, and then the pathway of social impact. So the artist is a music producer from Sacramento. They play a lot of instruments, and they also sing, produce, and engineer music. The project concept is a series of music production workshops offering free studio time to system impacted individuals who are interested in learning how to create their own music as artists or aid in the creation of music of others as producers, engineers. Participants will learn how to make beats, engineer recordings, release their music on digital streaming platforms, market it, and also have the opportunity to perform it for an audience. So it's a 2-hour weekly sessions with the artists at the artist's studio. The program could realistically serve between 35 and 75 people within the grant cycle. And then they go on to talk about some of their community engagement. But John, are you ready, or do you want me to go through a couple of these?
Yeah, I just have more comments. I thought it's a well thought out and articulated proposal that is matched with prior deep involvement, shows heart and business acumen. Working with detained youth is critical. Music is a good medium, and wish there was a video sample. I think they're mostly photos.
Yeah, I made that comment too. I said including a sample with audio would have it longer.
Yeah, but I thought it was a pretty strong application as well articulated.
Anyone want to add anything? Okay, I think we're ready to move to number, John, do you have your next one up? 213?
Yeah, okay, I think I do.
What is it, Melissa?
It's 213.
Yeah, 213.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a design discipline under social impact. Oh, this is an interesting one. It's on Sacramento urban landscape. Something she's calling a capital canopy aims to elucidate inequalities in Sacramento's tree canopy with disadvantaged communities and shed light on how disadvantaged communities can prepare for climate change. She has a pretty good methodology, delivering processes on just concentrating on the Meadowview track, the Avondale and Avondale and Del Paso Heights. And overall, I think this is a very unique application that it's urgent and timely, and it addresses the social and economic injustice through neighborhood environment. It's well articulated and very relevant. She has good art examples. So I think in today's, I think we've all seen how climate change has impacted particularly the disadvantaged neighborhoods, and it's something as simple as the natural environment, I think, does affect the quality of life, especially under the heat that we're living in now. So I'll just leave it on that.
Yeah, I would just add that I think the inclusion of data and quotes makes the proposal a lot stronger. So that was good to include.
Okay, I think I'd like if we could do one more and then take a super short break so that people can stretch and grab something to drink and head on home to the final reviews. That would be great. So the next one is 215, and that would be Kara.
Okay, 1 second. All right, so applicant number 215 is a visual arts discipline with a creation pathway. The artist uses porcelain to utilize carving techniques in their medium, and uses their heritage through uses their Japanese heritage through images of flora and fauna and traditional kimonos in their work. The concept is to create a series of non-representational figures in a large format, 5 to 6 feet. They will build stackable sections with suitable clay body for outdoor purposes. These are outdoor sculptures. And then the artist talks about how they want to engage the community by using social media through the building process to help create a dialogue and a potential exchange of ideas and solutions to problems other artists face. They also mentioned that they'll be using part of the grant to learn about the welding process, as they aren't familiar with that. I thought that this project was really interesting. I thought the work itself was really powerful and unique and beautiful. Also, like, had a lot of really interesting elements to recognize, like, traditional mediums and references there. But I thought that social media being like the only element of community engagement was kind of wasn't elevated enough, and that the project as a whole didn't really consider cross-sector explorations like we would hope for the grant applications to.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or something different that you want to add? All right. I think, thank you. We're going to take, I'd like us to take a very quick break. So if you could do something in around 5 minutes just to get you home sooner than later. If we can kind of just make it through to the end, I think we can, but if we take a 5 minutes and I'll come back and we'll be ready to be done. Thanks. I was so afraid you got dropped off. Okay, Carla, 2:23. We're ready to back on.
Okay, so 2:23. So the pathway is creation and the discipline is visual arts. The artist mentions having growing up in Venezuela and Trinidad, and then also working in Indonesia. So a lot of that cross-culture seeps into their work. And the proposal is to create a series of 10 paintings using patterns and motifs from traditional and contemporary textiles in combination with figurative work. The purpose of these portraits will be to honor elder immigrants who have left their country of origin to create a new life for their children. So they're going to make paintings. Some of my thoughts were, I felt that it was a good proposal, that it would be good to know how the artists will select elders, because I don't think they mentioned that in their proposal. Also, I mentioned that fusing South to East Asian culture, Hispanic culture, or Latin American culture, I should say, elderly immigrant stories. While it seems like a beautiful fusion, I wonder how relevant that fusion is for elderly folks. And that's the sense that I got. So correct me if I'm wrong, fellow panelists, but I thought that, it's kind of drawing on the artist's, background and wanting to bring in, this like Latin American and East Asian, but I just wonder how the people that they're interviewing would resonate with that, and that seems appropriate for them. But maybe I misread it.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
No, I think you're right. I think it's thinking about how, or I think where we would be able to sort of like complete the story there would be understanding maybe the questioning or the interview process or their approach to soliciting these individuals. I feel like there's like a missing element maybe right there to like kind of tell the full story. But I really thought these works, or the work samples, were killer, beautiful, beautiful pieces.
Okay, any other thoughts? Different ideas? Okay. Then we can move on to the next one. And of course, I just lost my place. Was that 223?
Yeah.
Okay, next one is 277 that we're at, Lula.
Oh,
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
am I in a different place? How come, is this, I have 225? What?
Oh, when I put the filter in for September 8 proposals,
Yeah,
it went from,
225 is not.
Oh, okay,
September.
so I'm on a
That's
different
next week.
filter. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No,
It's
I'll
just-
call you out when it's time. Yeah.
Oh, God.
No worries.
So 278 is me. I can't get there.
No, we're at 277, and that's Lula.
that's me. Yeah.
278 will be you. You'll be up next, John. So if you want
Okay,
to
I better get there.
Yeah.
So 277, the discipline is literary arts and the secondary is multidisciplinary arts. The pathway is social impact. So the proposed project is to produce and create a platform for the community to share music, verse, and poetry that allows them to reflect on their experiences and heal from trauma without violence. The artist will lead poetry and performance workshops in community spaces and mentor local artists throughout the project, through this process. I felt that the project concept had a detailed plan to engage community, and that engagement lasts through the development and also the implementation of the project. I also felt that the artist made a direct connection between distinctive lived experience and deeply rooted community-based artistic work. So I liked this proposal. And that is that's the conclusion of my comments.
I would just add that I said, it is evident that the artist knows and understands the community. There is evidence of power sharing and direct community involvement. And I really loved that they indicated partners. So that was a plus.
I agree.
Okay. If we have no other comments, we're ready to go to 278.
I'm not there. I'm having all kinds of trouble. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know what we can do? If it's going to take you a quick minute, we could move to another one and then come back.
Okay. Yeah, would you do that? I'll come back to September 8th. I mean,
Yep.
to 278.
All right, I'm going to move ahead to 287, and that's Carla.
Okay, so this is creation and visual arts. And so the artist is going to create photographs, sculptures, and installations that are rooted. Oh, wait, sorry. I think I may have missed the mark here. Okay, so their proposed project consists of a series of hand-braided Chinese knots, an ancient form of folk art. And they have been collecting phone chargers, broken headphone chargers, headphones, and miscellaneous cables that they will use to turn into Chinese knots. I'm trying to see, sorry, my notes are a little mixed up here. They will exhibit the artworks and present an artist's talk describing ideas and processes for the project during the grant period. They will offer workshops on the Chinese knotting techniques, and turning Access Gallery into a temporary cultural hub. I felt that it was a strong application with multifaceted exploration. I wonder about their engagement techniques and how visitors will interact with the art. It is great that the artist has partnerships in mind, which will help provide awareness of concepts explored and create impact. I also felt that the artworks, the work samples, you know, so much of it is like 2D, I'm sorry, 3D. So images or like videos or something that shows kind of the depth within the works would have made it more powerful, especially with some of the pieces that are like acrylic. or not acrylic. I don't know what material this is, resin, I think. Like if they had video of it, it would have kind of allowed us to kind of view it on a kind of greater scale versus very still images for something that is so, that has a lot of depth. But I felt it was a very strong project, and I like that it kind of takes in a lot of different concepts.
Yeah, I was a little bit about the work samples as well. Like I thought that I was a little confused because they're the artist backgrounds in like technology and photography. However, the subject matter for the project is this traditional knot making. And while I can understand that there's like a way to or the artist describes sort of like how that evolution comes to be, I just sort of felt like it was a disconnect between the artist samples or the artwork samples and the project statement. So it would have been helpful to have seen some imagery of sort of the intended project.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought this project has a lot of sort of cultural irony in some ways because they're wedding sort of traditional knot making to sort of waste products of technology. And as many of you know, at one time, China was the center of processing of IT waste, which are very toxic. And then until I think more recently, they declined to be the dumping place of, toxic IT waste. So in many ways, this project has, sort of political irony, I thought.
Okay. Okay, if those are the only comments, then I think we're ready to move on. And John, are you ready to go back to 278?
I am, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, number 78, it's the discipline is folk art and it's under creation. This is the art form of Sonhorotro, which is a regional art form that was sort of rediscovered, I should say, by this Mexican immigrant. Only he said he's heard it when he was in Mexico, but didn't really pay that much attention. But recently at some protests, he encountered it again and realized how significant as a community building expression this is. It essentially, he picked up a guitar music and he's rediscovering his folk art and his teaching. He feels that this is quite authentic to him of all the guitar, styles that he's played, that this was what he wanted to do. So essentially, this is a revival of the Mexican folk music to foster community and conviviality. And that's the important word here is the conviviality on community building. It's a very worthwhile project. And that he wants to do these in libraries. And I hope that his previous presentations in the libraries will pave his way for cooperation. And again, if he had said that he's, contacted these libraries and they are, already endorsing his project, that would make it that much stronger. But overall, I felt this was a very interesting folk revival from somebody, who was since been Americanized, if you will.
Okay. Anyone have anything to add? Okay, then thank you. The next one is also you, John, 285.
Okay, let me get there. Yeah, I'm having all kinds of disturbance. Sometimes like I break up in.
Did you get it?
Yeah, this is, okay. This is visual arts under the pathway of research. The continuation of my commitment to making artwork that raises awareness on environmental issues, offered possible solutions for creating resilient habitats. Project will impact the community by raising awareness about the affordable, eco-friendly building tech. This is on, I think, the rammed earth structures and how that could be a way of landscaping to further sustainability. The artist has a pretty extensive history, including many things outside Sacramento. I think this is an urgent and timely proposal that deals with our environment. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I would just add that I loved the work samples. I felt that they were very strong in the video too. I thought I really enjoyed the video. I kind of had to skip through it because it was too long, but it was great. And then I did mention that it would be good for them to mention potential partners for distribution, but I felt that it was a very strong application.
Okay, anyone want to add any comments? Okay, then we can go to 287. Oh no, we already did that. Sorry, Carla, you did that one, 290.
So 290, it is social impact and visual arts. The artist will create a book that features stories beyond surviving. Funds will support publishing and distributing copies of the book to victim service organizations and mental health practitioners. They are fusing narrative therapy and phototherapy together and expanding the therapeutic healing field. This next book will show the process going from surviving to thriving. So I really appreciated the artist being very vulnerable and sharing some aspects of their life, which kind of led them to create this book. You know, they've already created 2 photography books, so this would be in addition to that, focusing in on the idea of survival. I wrote that strong indication of impact. I would like to have known how many artists are intended to, I would like to know who the artist intended to share the books with. So actual names versus description, including quotes and description, was very helpful in understanding the project. I feel as though, you know, their history presents, you know, a good understanding of this type of work and being rooted within this concept of survival and you know, DV. So I felt it was a very strong proposal.
Any additional feedback?
I felt that the artist demonstrated strong personal connection to the craft and beautifully made that connection, and that the work samples were very beautiful and also supported their artist statement.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is 292. Lula?
Our applicant 292, the discipline is theater, and the secondary is multidisciplinary arts, and the pathway is research. So for this project, the applicant plans to host 2 events in addition to doing a series of one-on-one interviews with men to gain a generational perspective on masculinity and to get a better understanding of how the viewpoint has shifted through the generations. The events that the applicant has proposed will be centered around both town hall conversations to continue the group gathering tradition, in addition to discussing the presentation of masculinity as it pertains to Black men and mental health. This will be documented in the form of a research paper, which will serve as the basis for a documentary style film, which could be the catalyst for a play and or feature film. So how I took that was that the tangible outcome will be the research paper and the documentary, but not potentially the play or feature film. My comments are that the artist's proposed idea is unique and it targets a very specific audience, and it explains how the community will be engaged around the topic and outlines a plan for potential future projects that can grow from this. I also felt that the proposed project concept could be strengthened by connecting the research project to some previous work, especially experience in the technical skill of researching in this capacity. But I felt that the application was strong and unique.
Yeah, I have a question because I was also confused. I said it was unclear if the documentary / feature film will be created as part of this proposal. But I know the research, but are you saying that the documentary will, but it's a feature film or play that won't? I guess I was confused.
That was my understanding. And that's why I made sure to point it out in case I didn't understand correctly, but how I understood it was that the research paper and the documentary, I see what you're saying, documentary style film. So then is that the feature film? I understand what you're saying. My impression when I was scoring was that there's going to be research that leads to a documentary and then potentially a scripted play and a scripted feature film, but I do not know for sure.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly okay if it's really just the research that a person could spend their time, if they've documented it well and made the case to you that research in and of itself is considered a viable project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was confused too as well with the same sentiment here. I was also wondering about if it were only 2 events, these events seem more of like you said, like town hall forum type informational gathering, and I just felt like I wish it, or maybe we don't have that definitive line here with what the final product is, but to be the grant funding, being such a substantial amount, I felt like if it were followed through with some kind of documentary film, it would be a much more strong proposal and use of grant funding.
Okay. I think then we can move on to 294. Lula, that's you again.
Okay, thank you. 294, just get my spreadsheet, is the discipline is music and media. The secondary is media arts, and the pathway is performance presentation. The artist is proposing a live experience and web video series that highlights hip hop through the lens of interviews and live performances. This is a live stage show where the artist will sit down for one-on-one couch-to-couch interviews with the applicant, followed by performances of their songs accompanied by a live band. And the show will be live to attend. It will also be live streamed, and it will be post-produced for a web video series to be accessed online. I felt that the project concept highlights addressing the issue of misunderstanding in hip hop culture. I thought that was very unique, and I appreciated the applicant's detail about that point. But I also felt that it needed details about what specific issues and concerns will be addressed to tackle that misunderstanding. So I felt that the misunderstanding was highlighted, but maybe the approach could have used a little bit more detail beyond artist interviews. And then also the project concept would be strengthened with more detail about how the community will be engaged and impacted in the development and the execution of the project beyond being audience members, but beyond consumption. So I thought the idea was interesting. I just wish there was a little bit more detail on those 2 fronts.
Yeah, I think also including information on the artist selection process. So like criteria, who are they? Why are they selected? That would have helped too.
Okay, thank you very much. John, you're up next with 306.
Okay. This is listed under craft and social impact. The artist, if funded, wants to host 5 public paint events for families to come and paint within the year. She hopes to achieve with this project during and after is to make a great impact for families to be creative, connect, and be amongst a diverse community, provide a sense of healthy family dynamics, etc. I feel that there's plenty of photos showing works by parents and children. I'm not sure if any of these samples show any of the work of the artist. So that makes it a little difficult but I like the idea of, worthy project for families. So we'll leave it at that. It's not a lot of detail.
Okay, does somebody else have an additional comment?
Yeah, I felt like this was like a really feel-good project. I felt like there was a lot of, ability to enrich and inspire, but that was kind of like where it ended. Like, I think that there was a lot of more opportunity for impact and development and programmatic elements to this grant that the artist could have added.
Okay, thank you. Next is you again, John, with 308.
Okay. 308, it's multidisciplinary arts under creation. This is a very interesting one. Let me just read my comments first. It's a little difficult to decipher sometimes, but essentially, I said, as articulated, this project is cerebral and intersects science, design, technology, art, and even politics. The work has applications well beyond Sacramento. My small concern is about its relatability to the average viewer without excessive interpretation. Okay, the reason this is a unique application is that it's a research. Her artist statement is rather interesting, and it's a little nerdy in the sense that my research lies in the section of art design, so forth, large-scale installations, temporary and public exhibitions, and her artwork, this particular project deals with the mass media and the bots that may have influenced elections. So she's been tracking these sort of technological robotic things, I guess, that have been affecting and influencing our election. And so these things have a lot of implications for our democracy. But I'm a little concerned about as to how, the final installation may look and be interpreted by people just because this topic is so sort of ethereal in some ways and esoteric.
Okay.
Do we want to jump in?
Yeah, somebody else.
Yeah, I think I would just add that I think, you know, it's like looking at how this impacts certain communities. I think if I remember correctly, there's some mention of that somewhere, and how that shapes kind of culture. But I also wonder, like, when you're thinking about direct, you know, rooted in and expresses the experience of marginalized communities, I don't know if it really addresses that fully. So it's kind of like on the periphery. And if the connection is there, then I wish the artist would have like directly linked the two, as it, you know, as this topic relates to marginalized communities. But it's like really hard. It's like we have to kind of pull and come to conclusions in that area.
Yeah, I felt that, you know, the rubrics we have, you know, the earliest ones, you know, about the field and so forth, it's all, you know, quite strong. But when it comes to, you know, the disinvested communities, but one can really argue that these things have applications. And when you talk about redlining districts and voting suppression and so forth, it is a difficult connection, I think, to, you know, score higher on that, but it's, so yeah, this is a difficult one.
We have to look at directly what the application is giving us. And because they're not mentioning like redlining, which would completely recontextualize the narrative, and they're, you know, talking about these other concepts, and it's hard, like they have to kind of assume that we don't know, which, you know, I don't know too much about this topic, so I have to kind of piece together based on the text there. And I felt like the text was kind of lacking in that area. But had they made the link more direct, then they would have helped me understand how this is directly serving marginalized communities.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comment, or are we good? Okay, then I think we're ready to move to 312. And that's Carla.
Okay, so 312, this is social impact and visual arts. So they would like to host an art exhibit focused on the displaced community of Sacramento. They would like to use this exhibit to raise funds, obtain toiletry donations, but most importantly, bring community together to be a voice of the voiceless. The tangible outcomes would be for the community of Sacramento to raise $5,000 to purchase necessities for our people. I thought that it was a good proposal. It would have been it would be good to provide more evidence on community engagement strategies. For example, how will the community engage with the work? How will they hear about the events, etc.? How is the money being raised when the community they are attempting to bring in needs the support that, if that is the intention? So this idea of like, they're creating this community event for their community, but how are they raising money through these events when it's the community that's in need that's being invited to the events? So it's, you know, it's just, how else are you raising money to support this? And I don't know, maybe it was in there and I missed it, but I was a little unsure about that. Maybe they meant like raise money through this grant. But I don't know if any of you got clarity on that.
Yeah, I was a little confused about that as well. And I don't find that clearly answered within the proposal. One thing I did also want to mention is I felt like there were like several proposals regarding photography of homeless in Sacramento. And I just felt like, I don't know, there wasn't really as much, the way that the projects were like amplifying, uplifting this community wasn't really this project in particular. I just found a disconnect between sort of like the intention perhaps and then the execution. Somewhere it was sort of lost in the proposal to me.
Any other feedback on this one? Then we can move to the next, which is 319. Lula?
319, the discipline is music and literary arts. Secondary is literary arts, and pathway is performance and presentation. And the artist proposes developing a mobile street concert that will transform into a collaborative live recorded album. The artist will produce 16 mobile street concert videos that will capture the beauty and nuance in the greater Sacramento area. The mobile concert series will highlight the neighborhoods that have been forgotten. The neighborhoods highlighted in the application were Del Paso Heights, Oak Park, Meadowview, and each episode will be uploaded to all streaming platforms and also converted into an NFT. So I felt that the project concept was clear, and I appreciated that they highlighted the impact, their intended impact to the community by providing platform for the artists to collaborate and participate in the series. And it lays out a clear plan for the larger community impact through specifying exactly which neighborhoods they'll be targeting and how they'll make the project accessible. The artist also provides work samples that demonstrate their technical skill. And however, I do feel that it would have been enhanced with more examples of experience creating and producing live shows. I didn't feel as confident with that part of the work samples presented, but overall, I thought it was a very interesting idea.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned was the project has a lot of components, and I wonder about the costs associated. Like producing NFTs is very, it can be expensive, and so I'm just wondering, in terms of funds, with this being a $10,000 opportunity, just like how are you going to produce all of this within that amount? And if there are other funds coming in from different sources, it would have been good to know what those were.
And just to give you a little bit of context about funds, is that we really have asked applicants not to rely on raising additional funds to make their project happen, that they should be able to complete the project with funds in hand or with the amount of money that we've provided, so that there's no expectation that you're going to have to raise other funds, because if you don't, then perhaps the project can't happen. We can also work with applicants to, re-examine the scope of their projects as well to make sure, it's doable. And we will obviously do that with everybody. But again, you're working with the information that you have. Okay. If we don't have any other comments, then we're ready to go to 3:30, Carla.
Okay, 3:30. This is creation and visual arts. The artists, utilizing portraiture, interviews, and video, they aim to highlight the rich tapestry of the lowrider community. They submitted, I felt they submitted good work samples. I mentioned that I thought it was a very well thought out proposal. The proposal will be very instrumental in creating awareness about the community and creating a form of it, and kind of adding validity to it as a creative form of expression. I mentioned that if the artist has any connections to the 40 clubs that they mentioned, it would have been good to list them, just because I don't know the artists. I don't know what their connections are to the lowrider community. And I feel as though, if you're going to have them as a subject, it's good to understand connection to the community and knowledge and sensitivity and all of that. So I felt like that information was lacking, but overall, I thought it was a good proposal.
Anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the history of the lowriders that started maybe in the 60s or 70s, those rebels are now grandparents with families. In fact, across the street from where I live in Oak Park, it's a lowrider person who, when I moved in there 2 years ago, was a very different person from what he is today. So I can identify.
Thank you. Okay, if we don't have any other comments. And I have lost my place. Let's see, that was 3:30, so we're at 3:36. Lula?
Yes, thank you. 336, the applicant's discipline is media arts and the pathway is creation. So the artists will be writing and directing a narrative short film, and it will be taking place in Del Paso Heights and exploring the neighborhood. The film will be produced locally by local talent, and the applicant will be compiling stories of their own along with folks who are from the neighborhood to get an accurate story. The artist, I felt that the artist statement highlighted a unique approach to their craft, which they specified was fusing the filmmaking techniques with their background in music video production and fusing the two techniques together. I thought that was cool. I also felt that the project concept would have been strengthened with more detail about how the community will be engaged or impacted beyond research. That was something that came up multiple times in reading applications, was providing some kind of tangible outcome and putting it out, and that being the community engagement. And I just felt like the engagement should go beyond just presenting a completed project. And I also felt that this person is another person who lost points in the vulnerability index, even though the description of their project is clearly rooted in that. So that's another revisit for scoring.
One quick note. Yeah, I would just like to say that I think that it was interesting to see that the artists' work samples were traditionally rooted in music videos. But it was pretty cool to see how this work I could visualize how this work could translate into a documentary film based on the music video. So, I liked it in the sense of like thinking about the growth of the artist and how this grant could potentially help them explore new mediums and continue to transition their practice or grow their practice into sort of a different realm.
Okay, thank you. We are at 3:47. Carla.
Okay, 3:47. This is creation and visual arts. And so the artists would like to do a series of abstract sculptures, unrecognized human figures swelled by dark, poofy neon lights. Work is about gender oppression and female identity. I felt that it was a very strong application. The artist has a very comprehensive outlook, from actually creating the neon to using the neon to explore social issues. So they are both crafty and knowledgeable in the production of neon. It's kind of crazy to me because it's very difficult, but also in using neon to then explore a theme. So that I felt like they had a management of both. Hosting a discussion after the shows, so they intend to host a discussion after the shows to further the exploration of the topic, and then adding statistical data would have made this proposal stronger. But I scored this one really high just because it was very original to the pool, the applicant pool. I also I could see a lot of artistry in this one, and I love that they are taking in this very kind of contemporary art form and using it to explore something that is very much contemporary, which are social issues of gender, especially because it's so part of our everyday life. In addition to that, I felt that their community engagement was strong too. So overall, a good proposal.
Thank you. Any other feedback that someone like to add?
Yeah, I think just a general comment. The visuals are quite attractive, but I wish there would have been some description. As I said, it's not only in this one. There are a lot of times people just assume we know what the size, what the context, what the things are made of, and it would be worthwhile, I think, to spend a little bit of time to put some notes on descriptions.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so you can finalize your scores and move on to 366. Carla?
Okay, 366. So this is dance and performance. The artist is planning to create a work that will be performed live, but also filmed. The goal is to have a short dance film that the artist can use to submit for film festivals. I thought the artist included very strong work samples. The applicant knows their community very well, and it appears that they will center their community in the dance. Adding a list of quotes shows an understanding of challenges and desire to make change. The project details appear to not be fully fleshed out, so it was difficult to fully understand engagement approaches, project logistics, and more. So I really like I felt like it was a very strong narrative, but it was kind of lacking in some of that logistical data. But strong work samples and all of that. So just if the ideas were more fleshed out, it would have been stronger.
Okay. Any other feedback on this proposal? Okay. Then the next one is 368. Carla?
Okay, 368. This is research in visual art. The artist intends to create a body of work that utilizes 3D modeling and sculpting, animation, and augmented reality in their traditional paintings and sculptures. They plan to exhibit this body of work at 1810 Gallery, possibly including satellite sites that the public can engage with. My thoughts were that there was good evidence that the artist is very thoughtful in their thoughtful of their community and will approach their project with thoughtfulness and empathy. The community is at the center of the design, and it seems that it will be impactful for visitors. More information on engagement strategies would have made the proposal stronger. For example, is a workshop or lecture part of the proposal or optional? How will visitors learn about the events? So very strong, but just more clarity on approaches. How will people hear about it? Listing any potential partners and things of that nature.
Additional comments? Something different? Okay, then we are ready for our last review of the day, which is 372.
Okay, 372. Okay, so this is multidisciplinary arts and social impact. The artist will create and implement weekly art courses for disadvantaged youth at a youth detention facility. My thoughts were that there's evidence of commitment to the project, both having taught workshops and beginning communications with the program's director of the facility. The project seems well thought out in terms of execution and planning. In terms of connection, the artist has with the community. I did not see evidence of having worked with the audience group before, which makes me wonder how the applicant will approach engagement. This thought also connects to the applicant's concern that the children may or may not have an interest in what is offered. So they mentioned that they have this idea and that they're not sure how the youth will respond to the work. And that's like, of course, part of anything any proposal that you do is maybe not understanding how people will respond to it. But that makes me wonder if they understand the community well enough to serve them.
Any other thoughts on this application? Something that wasn't said or comments that you have?
Yeah, I thought that the art samples were greatly varied with different media. So that shows the versatility of the artist.
That was actually something else that I was going to note is that, you know, all of these are they're very stunning, but they are, you know, carved sculptures, it's jewelry, a chess piece, which that is so labor intensive and expensive materials. And I'm wondering how that will translate to working with youth in the detention facility where they can't have certain, you know, like materials or, you know, its materials are costly. And so I'm a little, you know, I think that they would be employing different art techniques and mediums, which is fine. But then what is the example of that? And, you know, how can I wish they would have included that in their work samples.
Okay, well, that brings us to almost 4 o'clock. So bravo, everybody. We managed to get through, I think, 54 applications in one afternoon. So give yourself a hand. That's a heavy lift and a lot of really interesting applications and really thoughtful reviews. So I really appreciate that. You still have opportunities if something came to you as you were looking at things again and you want to add comments. Comments are always totally welcome by us and obviously by our applicants because it helps them think about what they might want to do the next time if they want to strengthen an application or what they did that really spoke to you. So that's really useful. But again, your applications aren't closed. You have an opportunity to go into them and add to them. And for any of the guests that are still around and made it this far, we will be putting this up online in the next couple of days. And our next review, which is going to finish the applications, is, I believe, next Wednesday at the same time. So for those of you that I'm going to see next week, I will see you then. If you have any questions before then, let me know. But huge thank yous to you all and go get a nice rest after this.
Yeah, Melissa, may I stay and ask you a few questions? I know I won't be participating in next week.
Yep, sure.